Is it okay to be a follower? Hello and welcome to the Frequency of Heaven talk show. This is the weekly show where we answer all the tough questions people are facing today. I'm your host, Zachariah Seiler, and today here with me is Haley Pavir.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. So, is it okay to be a follower?
Well, first I think we should explain what that would mean to someone to be a follower in like a church setting. Mm-hmm. So, do you want to explain it?
Yeah, okay. So I would say that there might be a bunch of different groups of different types of followers. So we got those in the church. The basic one that we'll be talking about most, I think, is the group where they go to church, or like they have like a set church that they'll go to. They're called the sheep of the church, where they would just go in. They don't have a title or anything. They don't do much ministry wise as far as leadership goes. They just go to the church and they participate in whatever's going on. And I feel like, and that's the group we'll talk about first, but I feel like they get a lot of slack. They get a lot of people really look down on people like that. Mm-hmm. But do you think it's important to have those people? And do you think, because like I was saying, a lot of people look down on them. Do you think that's wrong for them to do that?
Yeah, I think our culture has created this viewpoint of people who are not only new believers, but people who don't understand what their calling is fully. Mm-hmm. And I think they're kind of looked down upon, and we're supposed to help people find where they're supposed to be in the church rather than just pushing them into leadership. Yeah. So I think we should have a lot more grace for those people and appreciate them more, because in the end, I think it can ultimately end up even pushing someone farther away. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think it's okay for someone to just say, you know what, I don't really want a title or a microphone or anything. I just want to show up to church every week and get what's given there.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people, because I look at myself, for example. For a long time, I was just attending church. I wasn't necessarily doing something every week, and I didn't really know for a long time where I fit in, but I knew that I was basically like a sheep, like the Bible talks about, and I was being led, I was being fed every week. And because of that time, I wouldn't be where I am now because of the time spent just learning and just sitting in services and just getting fed from my pastors every week. Mm-hmm. So I know that people go to churches and there's talk of leadership and just having a microphone all the time, and that's not always a good thing and a good place to start. Yeah,
for sure. And I think a lot of people, they see, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, that they see these people up on stage and they're real charismatic and they're speaking from their heart, or they're real passionate about what they're doing, and then they get saved, and then they think that that's exactly where they need to be.
Yeah, and ultimately that's just an imbalance, and I think everyone goes through it in some way. Like, I know not everyone is going to be kind of all over the place charismatic, but we all go through a stage where we're just figuring out where we fit in within the church. And thanks to our pastors, they can help lead us and help kind of bring that balance to us. But yeah, seeing those people, and it shouldn't really make people like envious of that, because we're all different. We're all created to have different abilities.
Yeah. So do you think that it's a must for a person to go through that sheep period? Like, for someone to be a sheep for a period of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you can't humble yourself and just learn for a little bit, because there's things that we need to learn, and there's stages that we need to be at before we're in leadership. If you can't be in that kind of stage first, I would be a little alarmed by that.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, especially our age group, like the millennials, just kind of, there's a lot of arrogance.
Yeah.
Kind of like they've already reached the limit of learning. And I don't think we should ever feel that way about ourselves. We should always be learning and always be under some type of authority.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they go in there, you know, like I was saying before, they see that example. So, I mean, obviously they're new to all this that's going on. So they think that's where they need to be, and that's the height of it. When in actuality, they need to sit back and understand everything that's going on, because it's so much deeper than just getting up on stage and you know, speaking passionately. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that. And for people not to judge those who just show up to church, you know, and don't have a title. Although I do believe everyone's called to be an evangelist in some way. But you can be a follower and an evangelist at the same time.
Yeah, we're all commissioned. We're all supposed to share the gospel in any way that, you know, is put on our heart to do so. So I look at the people in church when you walk in and they're greeting you. Those people are very necessary and very important to the church, just as much as someone who's speaking or someone on the worship team.
Yeah. And I think we've suffered from this too. It's like we have all one group where we're all just speakers, but then there's nothing else in the church to help it function, you know, because you need like those people who are just door greeters, or you need those people who just clean the church, or, you know, run this and run that. If everyone's a speaker, you can't really function, you know. And
we've even gone through the stage where we've tried to make the people who are most passionate about speaking be like the ushers and the people who are doing not lesser things, but I know that it's come across to them as lesser, and that's where the issue is, and that's where we have to address that everything is important, and these things are also biblical as well.
For sure, yeah, because every role is important, including the sheep of the church. You know, that's an actual role for someone to be in, and I think a lot of real big passionate Christians who just want to run around and preach all the time, you know, I think a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them who are real zealous look down on those people. Like, why aren't you, you know, being real outspoken the way I am, you know?
So not long ago, Isaiah and I had done a teaching on the aspect of the church and what every role plays and how important it is. So we started with like the leaders of the church and how they're basically responsible for our souls was like the translation and how important it was. So then we kind of went down like almost like a pyramid effect. And in Ephesians it says, so Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers, which all of these people are obviously leaders of the church. And then it says, until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. So I look at that and I think that every single aspect, starting with our leaders and then all of the people who are under them, we're all striving towards this goal to be in unity together.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it says, then we will no longer be infants tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. So it's, like I said earlier, being under this authority and learning, it's going to equip us to be able to find our callings and to eventually, if we're called to that, to be in some type of leadership because we've learned these things and other teachings aren't going to affect us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting, that because that was a time I was going through where, like I said, I was basically like a sheep. I was just coming and attending for a long time, but that was really important, and I grew a lot from that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it definitely is important for everyone to have that period of following, and I do think some people never really break out of that. However, whether or not you're a sheep, you're still an example for everyone. You know, so you don't necessarily have to be leadership, you know, but you still have that example by being the light in this world.
Right, yeah. I think ultimately you look at Christ and all the people that he encountered, and I mean, even if these people left him and they had been touched by him and they maybe helped lead one person to him, that's still important to him.
Yeah.
Whether you're preaching to thousands or, you know, you're more of a one-on-one person. It's all important.
Yeah. So I want to transition now to leadership and talking about their roles. How important is it for a leader to focus on the sheep rather than focusing on other leaders in the church?
Yeah, so I know that it's Ephesians 4 where it's talking about the pastors, apostles, evangelists, teachers. Is that all of them?
Pastors, prophet,
yeah, is the one that I didn't mention. So a pastor is someone who their main goal is to, it's actually really interesting because it's compared to a shepherd with the sheep. How sheep are very timid animals, and they almost have to learn to trust you.
Yeah.
So with the shepherd, they learn to trust him, so then they will follow him. But it's based on the shepherd showing them that they can trust him. And I look at people and how hard it is for people now to be able to trust. And I think that's just such an awesome parable, because as a pastor, they're supposed to go out of their way to show people that they can trust them because they're responsible for them. And I know that there's a Greek word, I don't have it with me, but it's like being responsible for their souls, literally.
Yeah.
So especially for the pastors. And I know like prophets, evangelists, teachers, and apostles, those are a little bit less, the way I look at it is a little bit less social roles, because they have more of like an outward approach outside of the church.
Yeah.
Do you look at it that way too?
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, and I do think like obviously, like you were saying, with the pastor being more involved in people's lives and shepherding them, and then there's like the evangelist, who's very more. I kind of take a look at it as like when you look at motivational speakers, and they're real. They get that spark going, and then
they're able to move on.
Yeah, and then where do those people go? Well, they'll go to like the teacher or or to a church and be shepherded by a pastor, you know. And then the teachers are more, let's delve in deeper to this, you know. So you got that spark, and then the teacher will try and kindle that, you know, keep it going, make it bigger, and then the pastor will be more in your life, you know. I see you doing this or this, and I want to try and steer you in the right direction. And it's all meant to work together. Yeah. All of those giftings. And another thing that it says is that they will get double measure of judgment, which is also kind of terrifying too. So if they're calling themselves a pastor or, you know, a leader of a church, and they're not following the biblical guidelines of what that is, it basically means they're going to get double judged. So, and I think people are real ignorant to that because they don't really understand that there are different layers of leadership. There are different roles that people play. You know, there's not just speakers, you know. There's not just pastor of the church. There's so many, and each one plays a crucial part in it. Even the sheep of the church play a crucial part in that in that level, in those levels of leadership.
Right, because they're the ones getting fed, getting taught by these things in order to be able to, to find what they're meant to do within the church and find their gifting. So.
And those sheep may never break out and like speak in front of a church, but they lead in other ways, like in their home life or at work.
They might be able to go to work and just feel more confident about sharing the gospel.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny to think about like a group of sheep like all herding together. But I mean, it's there for a reason. It's that, the parallel is there for a reason for us to remember that.
For sure.
This is what the body of Christ was supposed to look like, and this is why Jesus is to us like our shepherd, and so. Yeah.
So now let's talk about. We established that being a follower is good and sometimes needed, but let's talk about a negative version of a follower.
Okay.
So we got somebody who say, like I was saying before, they're a new Christian, they might be zealous, they see these people that are also zealous, and they just emulate them. So let's talk a little bit about how that kind of followers, that type of follower, how is that damaging to not only them but other people?
I kind of have a question, I guess, in response. Like, whose fault is it that that's their reaction and that's what they immediately want to do?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be wherever they're going? Wouldn't it be kind of a disorder of how they're teaching things or who they're hanging out with? It's not being presented to them properly.
Yeah.
That becoming saved is a process.
Yeah.
So that's what I would
true.
think, because it can turn bad like really quickly. Yeah. I feel like we've seen that like so much in our lives that it's just.
And I think that is a group of people in the church that don't understand that being a follower is okay, because they're teaching these people that you have to be like me. You have to do what I'm doing in order to be saved.
Yeah, and that's like, I don't even know where you start with that. It's sad to me, but we just have to be that straight line, because even in the Christian community there can be a lot of things that are not really taught correctly, not really done correctly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to respect and acknowledge what your leadership is and how important they are to you, because that's what's gonna, like Michael had said when he preached on Wednesday, that he called it secret to success, which fine, you can call it that if you want, but he said one of the first things he did was honor Anita and Jerry as his, like, they're responsible for him, and just being committed to their vision.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's just so important, and you don't see that very often today.
Yeah, especially with our generation. They don't understand how to honor authority.
Yeah.
Because everyone feels like they're big stuff, You post 100 selfies of yourself, and, you're like recording every moment of your life on Facebook or some social media, Like, everyone feels like they are above everyone else. And I know that's not everybody, Some people who do that may not feel that way, but that is kind of the culture we're in today. And no one really knows how to be grounded.
A lot of people with a lot of knowledge and a lot of biblical knowledge, but they're not taking their own revelation and mixing that together. It's kind of just all this knowledge, which anyone can study and know things. So.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I think for the most part, I mean, it can be a bad thing if you're a follower wanting to be like people, but you should really just want to be like Christ.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're not, then that's probably where you're going wrong.
All right, remember to tune in next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the next Frequency of Heaven show. Also, be sure to check out our Motivational Monday series every Monday morning to start your week off. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.